Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Hey, I just wanted to check in with everybody before the episode. We are releasing a separate bonus episode this week. We're still going to have our 2 regularly scheduled episodes, but I wanted to release an additional interview for your enjoyment. October's a big month for fire safety and fire protection, so I wanted to pay homage or tribute to the month and release another episode for you guys to enjoy. On this episode, we have Drew Slocum. Drew has been in the fire protection industry for over 17 years. He is now the host of the Fire Protection Podcast. Drew talks to us about NFPA 915, which is the standard for remote inspection. We get into interesting topics about the Fire Protection Podcast and also a little bit more about what he does at Inspect Point. If you're a big fan of other fire protection podcasts, you're going to like this one because we talk a little bit about behind the scenes and the inception of the Fire Protection Podcast and of Fire Code Tech. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and follow us on social media. Also, if you want to drop me a line at ggagliardi@firecodetech.com, I'd be interested if you have any suggestions for guests or topics you'd like to hear about. Let's dive into the show. Well, welcome to the show, Drew. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Gus. Thanks for having me. Been looking forward to this since we connected, not that long ago.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited to talk to a fellow fire protection podcaster. There's not too many in the game, but it's an exciting time. But I'm excited to get into it with
Yeah, I
you.
think you're the newest to the clan, right? Or one of the newest. There's it's like 4 or 5 of us now.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm aware of the Fire Sprinkler podcast, the Fire Protection podcast. I remember hearing Chris Logan talking about bison
Oh yeah,
fire.
Rob
I think I
Reed.
looked
Yeah,
at,
I had him on. Yeah.
and I've also seen little snippets of some starting and whatnot. But yeah, it's an interesting
Yeah,
time.
definitely.
So cool. So I just wanted to get started with a little bit about your background and kind of how you got started in fire
Yeah, sure,
protection.
sure. So I've been in fire protection for I think it's 17 years. Hold on, what? Yeah, I think it's 17 years. 17 years at this point. I started really right out of college. I went to the better of the Polytechnic Institutes, the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I know there's probably a lot of WPI listeners out there, so um,
Yeah.
Rensselaer doesn't have a great fire protection. They don't have one at all, a fire protection degree. But the godfather of the sprinkler, Frederick Grinnell, went to RPI, so I gotta give a shout out there. So I was an industrial engineer coming out of school. Went to work for Tyco, the big manufacturer of fire protection equipment. So actually went into manufacturing. I was manufacturing their dry pipe valve out of Houston, Texas, right out of school. Went into their management leadership program. Kind of moved around the West Coast with them. Went to another valve manufacturing plant. Then went down to Arizona, manufactured sprinkler pipe, with Allied Tube and Conduit, which is now part of Atcor. While I was there, kind of dipped my toe into sales a little bit. And then 2008 happened with the little bit of a crash there. I was looking for positions of fire protection products out of New York. Took a position with them, doing more technical sales, selling to contractors, engineers, owners. So worked there, moved to New York City, which is quite a change from Arizona. Went there and Yeah, I've worked that market for about 5 years with Tyco. At that point, Tyco was in kind of in flux at that point. So I went over to their competitor, Viking. So I went to Viking Minimax for about 4 years, and everything was great with both Tyco and Viking, still great companies. And uh, while I actually had the idea when I was at Tyco, but had an idea. I was sitting in an NFPA 25 class and wondered why everything is still on paper. So why not make things more digital in the workflows with inspection? So that was way long time ago. Partnered up with some high software developers that I went to school with, and some people around upstate New York, and we kind of put our heads together with this software platform. We had a mutual friend that was a fire protection contractor, and yeah, kind of been doing Inspect Point for 6 years or so now, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of the new wave of things, and um, selling sprinklers and the technical side before is great, but the new wave is a lot of the digital technology. So
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, definitely. That's a huge trend in the industry. Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting looking at your work history and, seeing your background in industrial engineering. You know, it seems like kind of the through line in your career is, refining processes and trying to make things more efficient. And, I see Inspect Point as just an extension of that. Of your career in that regard. So find that really interesting to hear about
yeah,
your
it's weird.
experience.
I got my Six Sigma black belt, and that's kind of what I went to school for. Got my Six Sigma black belt, which is like a process improvement, certification. And I got that, and then got into sales, and I kind of put two and two together, brought fire protection to the process improvement side. So it kind of fits, right?
For sure. Yeah, I think that yeah, for people on the podcast probably hear me say this a lot, but fire protection has a lot of room for advancement in the digital age, and um, just that whole can be refined and done more up to date. It seems like at stages it's just a little bit a tick behind some of the other engineering disciplines. So I'm glad for entrepreneurs and people who are trying to push that forward. But anyways, so I talked about a little bit about so your specialty in the industry seems like big in fire protection and for different manufacturers and for sales and just that seems like where you would um, have kind of built your expertise and just your knowledge base in the industry. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have like a specific project example or like anything that you could um, refer to as like a big building experience for your career? I don't know if it makes as much sense in the context since you've been in sales and
Yeah, I
whatnot,
mean,
but
obviously the Six Sigma thing has helped out with the process improvements and kind of gotten back into that with this whole Inspect Point platform. But I worked on a lot of big projects when I was with Tyco and Viking. So that's more new construction. So it's funny that the whole fire protection industry, it seems, it's driven a lot by manufacturers, right? They're the big honchos of everything. They've got a lot of the cash, a lot of the capital, and they control a lot of the process too, which is not bad. Fire protection's in a great spot. Um, but a lot of that's tied to new construction. So like what you're doing engineering wise, a lot of that is tied to new construction. There's a whole aspect of the business on the inspection and service side that it doesn't get forgotten. It's just you need to maintain systems, right? You can put a lot of money into designing one correctly, making sure the product is great, but if you're not regularly maintaining it, it's going to fail. And, it could fail within a couple of years. It could fail 10 years from now. So the ITM and the service side is, it's becoming more of a topic lately, and it's a sector of business that's has a, um, with everything going on right now and just that reoccurring revenue model. I think the inspection and service side is more looked at now um, than it was before. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, yeah, it was a nebulous question, and I appreciate the insight that you gave from your background in ITM. I think that's a good time to just talk about ITM some more and like trends in the industry. I think that you touching on like COVID and what's going on right now is driving things further and further into the technical age is a great
yeah, I get
topic.
asked a lot of times of where the industry's heading, and what's the next thing. And again, the manufacturers drive a lot of that, right? They drive the new innovations. Code is always behind innovation, which is unfortunate. And the cycle of code takes, it's like 7 to 8 years until something is fully enacted into a code, which, it's good. It goes through that long process from start to finish, just to make sure, something that is brought into code is relevant and important. But it also, the new kind of technology for manufacturers has always been, oh, let's make a new sprinkler, let's make a new fire alarm system, let's make a new, type of extinguisher out there, whatever your fire protection needs are. But that's going to transition, I think, in the next 5 years, if it already hasn't already, into the more of the digital space where you have connected systems, whether it's Internet of Things, IoT, whether it's gathering data from different systems to make better decisions on design, on do we even need to have systems in certain areas? I don't know. So, a lot of the data, a lot of the digital side, it seems like that's really seems to be the wave of the future. And manufacturers are starting to get on it. But, I sit on NFPA 915 now for remote inspection, which is a very interesting standard because it's newer, and it's going to drive some of the other standards as well for um, remote inspections, which is, inspection is a big piece of the business, but it's going to start connecting these systems to do things virtually, which,
Uh,
even virtually is a big term lately, right? So it might kick it into gear more. But even with that, that code, like get back to that code cycle, it's still going to be 7+ years until something takes off. So um,
wow, that's pretty remarkable. Yeah, and for those who don't know, NFPA 915 is the standard for remote inspections. Is that the formal name
yeah,
for it?
it's a standard for remote inspections, and it's a pretty broad, generic standard. And I think they're just trying to get some technology out there for AHJs, for building owners that um, can utilize, virtual technology to do inspections. I don't think it's really being driven toward the regular ITM, required per NFP 25, 72, some of the other codes. It's more just leaving it open for the AHJ to um, kind of determine what they need to do. So, and like, we've had this pause, and with whatever's going on, there's opportunity. Do people do building facilities want people in their facility? So to do an inspection. So that's kind of, it's giving an AHJ, all right, maybe I can do a visual inspection with a camera, or you know, have a facility manager walk around with an iPhone just to be on FaceTime, to do just any type of inspection, not fire protection, just a building inspection. So it's kind of covering a big basis, which is good. I think you're just trying to get a lot of new thoughts going, and we'll refine the code as it kind of comes around more. It hasn't even been out for public comment yet. So
Yeah, I understand that 915 is in like the extreme early phases of the process, but and just like fleshing out the idea of what the standard is going to be, and yeah, that sounds really fascinating, and just hearing about that. But yeah, I think that the topic of remote inspections has been coming up a lot lately, and I've heard a little bit of talk of what's appropriate for remote inspections, but what kind of things can people expect to be able to conduct remotely, and what stuff really has to be done in person, or like where's that line kind of? I'm sure you're pretty aware
oh
of
yeah,
that.
there's a big line. I mean, and business is kind of driven off of inspection and service as well. So there's also a business line there than actual risk line as well. So it all it all depends. Um, I think it's going to push it down to the HJ and let them, the HJ, whether it be the insurer or be the owner, be the fire officials, to make that determination. A lot of it right now is just a general building inspection. It's general a walkthrough. Why do you need somebody on site to do a walkthrough when you can do that versus doing FaceTime, or do you need to have somebody on site? Now, when you get into the scheduled maintenance and the scheduled inspection, that's a whole different ballgame. That's all tied to the code, the different NFPA codes, which that may change over time as well with remote inspection. I mean, and some of the data will help that out. Like, do you need somebody on site to do a visual? Can you put a camera there? I
Right.
mean, a lot of that's being discussed by a lot of big professionals in the industry that sit on a 915 with me and have done some other webinars on it. So it's, again, you're right.
Yeah.
It's in the early process, but it needs to happen because the technology's already been around for 5 years. So
Yeah.
why is it taking so long? So NFPA is starting to get it, um, and trying to push faster and more thoroughly.
Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting seeing, I mean, some of these, fire alarm devices have testing mechanisms already integrated into them,
Correct.
you know? So formalizing some of these inspection standards. And yeah, I mean, for a visual inspection on a pressure gauge, why do you need to be there in person to do that? I can see a lot of these visual inspections can just be conducted remotely. And yeah, I see a huge benefit, and probably they'd get done more often. And like you said before, we'd have data to tie to the event. You know, uh, uh, it's so hard to get proper documentation of inspection data. I see it all the time when we're working in existing facilities. And to your point earlier about, it's easy to install a new system and make sure that it's done right. But the hard thing is maintaining it for 50 years and keeping proper documentation of management of change within the facility. And so I think that the digital aspect of it only makes
Yeah.
sense. It's that data and leaving that trail of concrete evidence that this is happening can only protect, people's life safety, can protect the building
Well,
owner.
a lot of frequency of inspection in NFPA was kind of created by seasoned industry professionals determining it, but they're kind of pulling it out of the air. They didn't have any data to back it up, which gets into the whole, a lot of what I've, my degrees in the Six Sigma stuff I've done is you need data to prove why you're making a decision. So let's let the data talk for itself and make the decision off of that. Does something need to be monthly? Does it need to be weekly? Does it need to be quarterly? That gets beyond remote inspection. Remote inspection is something else, but the data side, there's a whole another set of NFPA standards for, I think it's 950 and 951, that's starting getting into the more data collection side to determine, to make decisions on future revisions of the code. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that data driven decisions, and, I was just talking with somebody recently about, how energy storage systems are a new hazard for fire protection. And, what can we do? How do we determine, how to protect these hazards? Well, rigorous testing, looking at the data, and having data driven decisions, about these new things that pose a hazard and these new processes. So I think that's just the new way of doing business is, hey, let's look at the data, let's analyze the data, and let's decide from there instead of just rule of thumb or, that sort of thing. So I definitely get it. But very interesting. Very interesting. Well, so I saw that you are or you're part of the New York Fire Sprinkler Contractor
yeah,
Association. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
yeah, it's so I've been in the New York market for uh, going on 11 years now. I moved out of New York City last year, but I'm still heavily involved with the HJs there, FDNY, DOB. But there's been an association that's been around for 84 years. It's probably older than NFSA and AFSA even. It's a New York Fire Sprinkler Contractors Association. All the contractors around New York either have been a part of it or it's kind of transitioned over the years. But it's a group of contractors, manufacturers, suppliers, and AHJs all getting together. Used to be in a room. Now we're doing it virtually. But yeah, just getting together to put all our ideas on and get on the same page. So I think that's a great way for jurisdictions to um, really progress. Right? Is if all stakeholders and all parties are all on the same page and put their ideas together. So FD&Y bounces a lot of ideas past the group. So because they want to make the right decisions for the city that they're protecting. So it's a great camaraderie that we have with the different jurisdictions around New York City and the metro area. So so I'm the executive director for that. It's similar to like an AAFSA, NFSA, but we are fully independent. We've been around for again 84 or so years, and yeah, it's fun, but it's also very localized too. So
That sounds awesome. That's cool to be involved with the professional society and one in such a place that is um, definitely on the cutting edge of what's required for the industry. I've had work in New York and New York City, and it definitely seems like they are far
wait,
more
you've done
progressive than.
engineering in New York City?
I've had a project at the
Oh
LaGuardia
yeah,
Airport, um, but so yeah, so it's definitely a place that is more progressive. They're not as keen on the idea of delegated design, and they're just interested in doing things. I'd say more by the book than some jurisdictions
yeah.
that.
They've got their own rules, and rightfully so. It's a different city than the rest of the world. So, but they adopt pretty much the standards as is, and a few exceptions here or there to kind of New Yorkize it. So
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the work you're doing at Inspect Point. I know you mentioned a little bit before, about your work there, and For those who don't know, what is Inspect Point?
Oh, so yeah, I guess I probably should have started with that, right? So InspectPoint is a cloud-based software solution for fire protection, essentially. And what it does is it kind of, uh, from a contractor's point of view or a facility's point of view, it keeps you in compliance or it runs your inspection process. So from all the NFPA 25, 72, 2001, 10 for extinguishers. So if you're in that business as a contractor, it runs all the inspection. You can, it's a mini CRM as well. So you can have all your customers in there. You can send proposals. You can send quotes. You also can dispatch your technicians out of there to follow up with work to make those fixes. So it kind of, from a contractor's point of view, it runs your entire recurring revenue stream. And for facility side, it keeps you in compliance, and we kind of tie everything back to the code, but it's fully customized as well. So if you're your own jurisdiction or want to see your own kind of inspection templates, we can do that. So it's been fun. We're very cutting edge. It's funny when coming from the manufacturer's world, when if you came out with 5 to 10 new products a year, it was good. Um, it was a good day. It was a good year to go to your customers with those new products. Well, we're putting out about 20 new features or 20 new products every month. Um, and
Wow.
we're able to do that because it's a software, and a lot of that's my team. My software team and my customer success team is impeccable. Um, and we've been, we're still a pretty young company, but we're highly looked at throughout the fire protection community. So
Without a doubt. That's very interesting. It seems like uh, the idea of inspection, testing, and maintenance, and the burden it can be. It seems like it's a burden on certain jurisdictions.
mhm.
To have the fire department, engage and do inspections, or whoever the authority having jurisdiction is, engage in ITM, and for the building owner, it seems like it's a big expense, and it's something that I think could be done better. So it's cool to hear you talk about Inspect Point, and yeah, that you guys are so embracing tech and just the digital aspect
Yeah, there's
of
a
it.
lot coming. We're always innovating. IoT is a potential next step platform, as well as integrating with some of these HJ software platforms as well. HJs have their own, compliance platforms. So we're working very aggressively to make things easier for the HJ, the contractor, the building owner. So just makes sense.
Yeah, and so you guys inspect, not just your typical fire alarm and fire sprinkler, but I mean, you guys pretty much inspect like the gambit of everything that you can think of fire protection, like pre-action, deluge, fire pumps, standpipes, fire hydrants. So I think that's pretty interesting. That
It's a whole spectrum. It's fire alarms, special hazards, kitchen suppression systems, extinguishers, fire doors. Fire doors is a whole different market. Fire dampers is a whole different market. Smoke control systems. Those are so they're different sectors. They're run differently. The compliance is different. So every feature and module in our software is kind of geared to that NFPA quote unquote code or the actual style of inspection. And then we have a full customized solution where you could run your OSHA, inspections off of it even. So
oh
yeah.
wow, the OSHA, that seems like a whole nother can of worms. There's a lot of
There's a lot
compliance.
of compliance and especially now with all the safety and health and safety going on with buildings. There's a lot there. There's a lot of compliance. So the platform's there. We just you can customize whatever you need for it.
Well, awesome. Well, I wanted to, talk to you about the fire protection podcast, and talk about your inspiration for the fire protection podcast. And yeah, I'd like to hear more about it from
Yeah,
you.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm a big golfer, so I listen to a lot of golf podcasts, which, it can be a little boring golf sometimes, but the podcasts make it a little fun. I listen to some business podcasts out there, and Joe Rogan's a big one. Big fan of his. So um, the idea probably was a couple years ago. We didn't start it until, or I didn't start it till last year, around this time, maybe April of 2019. But we had the domain. One of the partners in Spec Point, Pat Doyle, he's a big podcast guy too. So, um, we threw it around and we're like, let's just toss some information out there. And at that time, I think Chris Logan was probably 5 episodes or so in at that point, and with the Fire Sprinkler podcast. So I was like, you know what? There's another podcast going. We better get on this. So it's been fun. We're 21 episodes in. We talk a lot about generic uh, fire protection. All the different. There's a lot of different fire protection sectors, right? So I could go a lot of different ways. It's not just sprinkler. It's not just alarm. It's not just suppression. But we get into the business sides of it too. And what we're dealing with right now with what's going on globally. So yeah, we don't really talk about Inspect Point. It's more new technology out there, new ideas. You had Andy Lynch on from Fire Solutions Group, and I had him on. I never knew about that technology, augmented reality. So I had him on. It's a really cool, and I think there's an avenue for it. It's just finding the customer, finding the market for it. So just getting information out there has been pretty powerful for that. So it's been fun. I did a podcast at NFPA last year at a tequila bar. I don't know if you heard that one, but we did
Nice.
a Facebook Live, and it was actually a controversial topic. It was nitrogen and air, compressed air, and dry and pre-action systems, and pros and cons to both. And uh, it's a pretty controversial topic. So why might as well throw some beer and tequila at it and see what happens, right?
That sounds like
It was
fun.
a great time. I wish I could do more of them. And with everything happening right now, there's not a lot of face to face, but we'll soon be back there.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's funny because I'm a big fan of podcasts too, and when I was thinking about doing one, I didn't know yet about the fire protection podcast, and I was thinking about names, and I was trying to get my domain in order, and I was like, oh my gosh, the fire protection podcast. It makes so much sense. And I typed it in, and you had, I think you were 2 episodes in. It was last April. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I missed it by that much. And I was like, what a genius name.
Well, we
And
had
so,
Pat grabbed the domain probably a year and a half before that. So we
oh my
were kind
gosh,
of we
it's
were kind
such
of
a
just
good
sitting on
name.
it, and then we just he let me run with it, so it's been good.
That's awesome. No, it's great, and I think it's all good stuff. Like you said, that there's so much room and for just people to get more knowledge about fire protection, or I think that there's not enough spaces where people just kind of talk shop about different stuff in the industry, and what their thoughts on it, and getting to hear professionals speak their mind and whatnot is a huge deal. And if you look at big industries like tech and other industries, it's like, hey, these guys have podcasts, and these guys, a lot of different people. There's not just one, like you said, Joe Rogan. There's not just one comedy podcast. There's like 20 of them. There's 30 of
Sure.
them, and so there's a lot of room at the table for people to have these conversations, and I just think it's
Yeah,
great.
it is. It is good. It's something to listen to. and you get a lot of I get listeners all over the world. I mean, most of them are North America and the U.S., but um, a lot of them are, over in Asia, over in, down in Australia, New Zealand. It's weird where you connect with these people. So um, yeah, it's interesting. It's a global spread on podcasting. So it's been good. So if you ever need any, feedback or whatever, um, or any assistance with that, and are you doing this all yourself?
Yeah, it's all me. I'm doing all the editing, all the all the yeah, pretty much all of it. Yeah, my fiance helps me out. She's a PR and marketing professional, so she helps me out with some of the social media stuff and will read my terrible writing and make it look good. But other than that, it's me editing. It's me booking and
Yeah, well, I was the same. That's what happens, and that's definitely what happens. And you'll get, if it gets big enough, then you can get a team behind you. And Chris is still doing his on his own. It's kind of a one. It's podcasting a lot of times a one person show. So, but it's
yeah.
good. It's good to get information out. And I it also ties back to what you're doing professionally a little bit too. So.
Yeah, I feel a little bit. It's a little bit of a selfish goal because I get to ask people questions, but not only are these things that I think are interesting, but these things I don't know. So I get to reach out to people who are professionals in their field, like you, and you're sitting on NFPA 915. You're going to be a part of standard that's going to be a part of history, and we get to sit down and have a conversation and I come away with, knowing more about it all. And it's like, man, it feels like a life
Yeah,
hack.
yeah, no, it's good. I'm glad you're doing it, and well, there'll be a few more that pop up here or there. And it's fun that people are doing it. Kind of, there's a few manufacturers doing it, NFPA's doing it, but I feel if you're tied to one of those big, no, I'm not taking a shot at any of those big players, but you're kind of, I don't know, you're kind of strapped sometimes in what you can discuss or what your opinions can be on certain things because you're tied to that
Yeah.
bigger business, and which is not a bad thing. There's still room for that. It's just you'd rather have it more open and honest and kind of coming from the heart a little more.
Yeah. Yeah. ICC has International Code Consortium has a podcast and, you know, I listen to it and, I think it's interesting and they cover some topics that are, I'd put on the same level as like what SFPE and what NFPA likes to talk about in the regard that, they talk about what's really trending in the industry. And like, in my mind, I'd be interested if they would just do a podcast talking about like different chapters in their standard. It's like, and I think that part of that is like you're saying, because they are such a large organization, it's not as uh, personal as that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's interesting. I definitely think I'm for all of it. I'm for Viking doing a podcast. I'm for ICC doing a podcast.
Yeah, no, I am too.
It's all good
More the
stuff to me.
merrier.
And yeah, I think it's really interesting what you were talking about earlier about people around the world listening. And it's like, I think that we forget, like ICC or, like we talk about building code issues or NFPA standard issues. And like, we forget there's, uh, so many countries around the world that adopt the same model codes as we do. And, ICC is a phenomenon that's mostly developed by people from North America, predominantly the U.S., but there are countries, like all around the world that use these same codes and standards. So it's uniquely a North American thing, but it's also pretty global, like all this that we're talking
Yeah,
about. So
definitely.
cool. Well, yeah. So I just like on the topic of the fire protection podcast, like where do you see it going, or like where do you want to take it? Like I like what you're doing now, but like, do you have a big goal for it, or like where you want to go
I
with
want
it?
Spotify to give me $100 million contract. That's what I want. No,
Yeah, no, I think that deal was low. I think they give him more than 100, but yeah, I hear you
whatever it
about
was.
that.
Anyway, um, no, I keep getting ideas out there. I mean, I haven't even attacked any of the fire alarm stuff. So I have a lot of fire alarm ideas that I want to get out to the market. And that's such a big market that we haven't touched. And a lot of, sprinklers separate than suppression, that's separate than fire alarm. So, and a lot of those don't cross lines too often. So there's different avenues. I mean, it's a fire protection podcast. So there's, potential 6 different sectors to fire protection. It could be split out even more. And then, there's a lot of categories I haven't even touched. I haven't had a fire door podcast yet. So, there's a lot there. And, it'd be nice to integrate it back with what we're doing at Inspect Point too, and to drive some of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just it's fun right now, and becoming an industry market leader has been fun, and I would like to do some more live ones at some of the shows, hopefully next year. But it's a lot. There's a lot of work into it, and as you know, there's a lot of work to get them out and to do them right as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, yeah, it's a lot of work to do them right. You don't just want to put out something that's, not quality and not thought through. And yeah, on your remark about, the different avenues of fire protection, I mean, yeah, if you're looking at a building holistically, or even, if you're not looking at a building, I mean, there's fire protection now for
Yep.
wildfires and for, I mean, there's so many different things you could talk about, and people you could talk to. So yeah, I definitely think that's a good point.
Yep.
But anyways, I know we've talked a lot about remote inspections and ITM and where that's going in the digital age, but I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about, what you see as any other meaningful trends in the industry right now. I know we talked about COVID and what that's doing to fire protection right now, but yeah,
Yeah, I think. I mean, the industry's gonna change through this. I'm on the sales and marketing side a lot, and just the business side. I don't think fire protection is not going away. It's always going to be driving forward with the code, which is a great part of the industry. We'll go through ebbs and flows with the economic cycle with new construction. I think we're on the brink of a pretty big new construction decline. Um, there's a lot of backlog right now with current projects out there, but what's happening after that? And I think there should be concern over that, because there's not a lot of funding there, or it's kind of left because of what the economic fallout from this situation we are in. So, but that could be only 18-month, 12-month blip, maybe even shorter. So we'll come out of that even stronger, but it'll change the way we do things on a business side, on the sales side, on just working, all the remote working and virtual stuff. Cloud-based systems. We have a cloud-based system from day one. That's a huge thing now. Go-to meetings, Microsoft Teams, Zoom. That's nobody would have thought of that 6 months. Oh, people would still used it 6 months ago, but now everybody's having to use it. Are you working from home, Gus? Or are you in the office?
so I was working from home for about almost three
Yeah,
months.
yeah,
Just went back in. My company's doing like a phased
yeah.
return, but it's definitely pretty
It's gonna,
wild in
yeah, it's
that
gonna
regard.
change work, and does that impact the construction landscape a little bit? Um,
Yeah.
I came from the sales and marketing side, and how does that affect it? Because before, when I saw engineers like yourself at Tyco and Viking, I'd go into the office, I'd do a lunch and learn, all that, buy them lunch, hang out, after work occasionally. And that's not going to, you'll still have that, but not as much over the next year or so, I think. Um,
Yeah.
so, the companies will have to be a little bit more nimble and think outside the box a little more.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying about, what is this going to mean for the built environment or for, the production of new buildings in the next couple of years. Right now, we're fortunate that the economy was so white hot before all this hit, or I don't know what kind of backlog anybody in the industry would be working on. So I think it'll be interesting. I don't know what that there's got to be a time where we see the impact of this for people constructing new
Mhm.
buildings or even maintaining existing
Right.
buildings. So that we're gonna see that. I don't know when that ripple hits everybody, but the stone's been dropped into the pond. Um, but yeah, it's very interesting to think about. And another topic I wanted to ask on the fire protection professional development side of things is, what kind of resources would you recommend, or where do you like to go to find out information about fire protection? I know you've mentioned a lot of really that you've worked for really great, larger companies, those Tycos and Vikings. They all have great stuff online, but yeah, where do you like to go to consume information or resources or tools for fire protection?
Well, I mean, the Fire Protected podcast is a great one. But yeah,
Nice.
good plug there. You know, yes, the manufacturers again, they're the ones driving the industry because that's where the money's at, and they're the big public company, so they're driving a lot of the innovation technology. So keeping in loop with your local business development or territory salesperson, that's always key. Seeing those webinars online. Once they're back, get to a trade show. Trade shows are, you see the powerful companies out there, but you also see the smaller companies like myself, like Inspect Point, like some of the, other startups, other manufacturers out there, and you actually get to put your hands on and see the products. If you can get to a trade show, every couple years or whatever, wherever it's at, highly recommend it. Whether your company pays for it or you just pony up, take a few days off, and head there because it's usually in a decent location. But highly recommend going to a trade show. Going to too many of them it gets a little overdone, but NFPA is a pretty massive conference. A lot of and all the industry leads are there. So um, online, I mean, training resources. Fire Tech's a great resource for fire protection training for fire alarm, sprinkler, all that. Fire Tech's great, and yeah, I didn't think of it until you asked me that, but trade shows is a pretty good one. You meet a lot of
Yeah,
people too, so there's you get that face to
yeah,
face, and you're there for a day or two, and you should get a lot out of it by even just walking the show.
for sure. Yeah, I think that's a great note. I mean, I haven't got the chance yet to go to a NFPA, but it seems like the opportunity to connect with people and to, see what's going on, get a sense of the pulse of the market is there's not too many better opportunities. So
Another one.
that's
Now that
really
you save
interesting.
it, every place, every region in the country and outside the country has local associations. I'm part of the head of the New York Sprinkler one. That is a great opportunity for young professionals to get involved in the industry, and I learned that early on at Tyco to go to these association meetings because you create those relationships with everybody in the industry. And um, I hate to say relationships is a great way to progress, but it is. get involved, volunteer your time to do some charity work for those associations, be on the golf committee team, whether it's SFPE, NFSA, AFSA, AFAA for fire alarm, NAFED for suppression. Those are, getting involved in those associations. You're not getting paid to do it, but it's very valuable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're not getting paid to do it, but you're getting to be around like-minded professionals, and you can make connections that are, more meaningful than any kind of compensation. Just being able to know somebody from SFPE and be able to call them up and pick their brain about some piece of technology or some piece of code is pretty
Yes,
invaluable. So
exactly.
yeah, I like that suggestion a lot. Cool. So, yeah, I really like. It seems like you are very well versed in sales and marketing, and have a good sense of like just a business development. So, I'm really kind of interested in just thinking about yourself or your own career. What would you have told your like younger self, or what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's just getting into the
You're
business?
just getting in the business. I mean, absorb as much as you can. Getting involved in those associations is a key part of that. I think just don't do your 9 to 5 and go home. And getting those associations are in the evening hours a lot of times. So volunteer your time to get involved with that. I think that's a big piece. I did that early on, and it benefited. Um, you know, I got a piece of advice, and this is how I got into sales one time. Is a lot of business and a lot of these associations happen with golf tournaments. So get yourself a set of clubs, take a few lessons, and you wouldn't understand how much that does on the business side of things. On the tech side, maybe not as much. On the tech side, obviously get involved in certifications, get involved in the NFPA code cycles too. I didn't know that too much until recently, the NFPA code cycle. So I wish I knew that. Um, and then you can drive decisions that way. Whether you're just a designer, whether you're a technician, you can input to NFPA. Um, so I never knew that until a couple of years ago. So yeah, I mean, another big piece of advice: get your LinkedIn profile up to date. It's I mean, even if you're very happy where you're at, if you want to be involved in the industry, make sure you're present on LinkedIn, because that's pretty important, just to know those connections, whether it's on the business side or just a technical resource side. Pretty important.
Yeah, without a doubt. You got to dig that well before you're thirsty. If you're just, waiting to develop your LinkedIn profile and, make some meaningful connections when you need a new job, that's not really when you need to do it. So that's great. That's great. Well, awesome, Drew. I appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find more information about you and Spec Point and the Fire Protection Podcast?
Inspectpoint.com. My email is drew@inspectpoint.com. Pretty easy. And the Fire Protection Podcast, you can find it on Apple's, or the Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, any podcast environment. You actually can go to our website, inspectpoint.com too, and find it there. But and then find me on LinkedIn, connect. That's always a good place too.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Drew. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks, Gus. Great talking to you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.